Hello and welcome back to this follow-up video on my GUI data pack. In this little video here we will take a look at the actual objD package that is the engine behind this GUI generator and that makes this whole generator so responsive and adjustable depending on which GUI you want and which item should go where. So I hope you already know objD and have some basics in it. It is not required that you have the programming skill. If you don't know objD, just watch this video up here. That should be a good introduction into the topic, or else visit the website objd.stewardess.com. Yeah, well, at first we obviously want to create a new project, so let's open our PowerShell here, and then we just want to create a new project, so objD new GUI test. This created all of our files here, so let's go in there. And also in our PowerShell we can now go into GUI test and open our IDE. In my case this is Visual Studio Code. Here we can see our starter template, and of course the first thing that we want to do is install objD itself and also the extra package that is required to build these GUIs. So we just add objD _GUI here. You can find the current version on the official pub dev site. That's also in the description below. But for now we will just stick with the latest version. The same also goes with objD. So then let's go into our pack file here. We can replace this name here. Let's just call it GUI. Of course you have to give it your own name. And I will also leave the project name like it is right now, but obviously you have to change it to your data pack. And now we can already import objD _GUI. There we just want to import the GUI.dart right here. The GUI generator itself is a module. That means we can insert down here in the modules array. In that way objD can make sure that this is ran 20 times a second, and it also registers all the files that are required for this GUI module. So let's use this here, GUI module, and here we already get some options. Depending on the container and the entity that we want to support, you can choose here. These are pretty similar to the drop-down in the online version, and we'll talk about a few of these later. But for now, let's stick with chest. Here we want the location. I have to see where's my chest here. -47, 56 and -37. And we'll take a look at how to make this more responsive later on, because now it is just stuck to this one chest, but it is the easiest to start with. We also see that the pages argument here is required, so this will be a list of GUI pages. So the GUI can be divided into pages. You can navigate between them, display different content depending on the page you're on, and make a really rich GUI. But you can also do it with just one page. It will just load one GUI, and also it will also not generate a scoreboard for that at all. So it's completely your thing. So let's start with one page, GUI page. And basically here in the inline documentation you can already see this needs a list of GUI slots. GUI slots is a custom class that is made especially for this GUI package that wraps all the interactive parts. So for example, the placeholder, the next page, and so on. All of these things are GUI slots, and they internally hold an item that is processed further. So let's do that. Let's insert the slots here, and we can start gently by just introducing the placeholder. The placeholder itself has two properties, item and slot. These are both optional, but for now let's choose an item actually. We'll later see how we can get rid of this and make it more efficient. This is a standard item. You can define everything here, like the count, the slot, hide flags, names, NBT, and so on, like you could do with a usual Minecraft item. And then we can just choose a type here. Fortunately, we have the items class where all of the Minecraft types are predefined. So let's just use a stone here. So what will this do essentially? Well, we just defined that our GUI module should be of the size chest. This constructor is just to measure the size and fill up the GUI respectively. And it should be at the location that we specified here with only one page. This one page should have one item. And of course, if we don't specify a specific slot right here, it will just fill up the chest itself. So it will just fill up the first row, then the second row, the third row, and so on. So in our case, this here would be the first slot. And I generated it quickly and can also reload now. And we can see in our chest, we have the first slot here and it is a stone. And why is this called a placeholder? Well, we can't really do something with this. This item just blocks the slot here. But oftentimes you actually want to do something when the user here clicks the item. And therefore we have the interactive class. This basically allows you to define some actions that should happen if the user clicks this item. And that can be any kind of widgets or commands, just something you could imagine. And like you can see, this requires actually an item because every interactive thing is different and has another item. So let's do that. Items. Let's insert an arrow here. And for each time we click on this item, we want to increment a scoreboard. Let's define the scoreboard up here. Final score equals score entity.player. Of course, this would be entirely different in your data pack, and just call it count. Now we can go into these actions and just say score +1. This will increment it by 1. Then we also want to give it a specific slot. objD has this nice feature that we can give slots in terms of rows and columns. There are a few containers where this is done, for example the chest. So here we don't have to remember which slot is where, but we can just say we want the second row and then the 6th column. This would automatically calculate the position inside of our GUI. So let's see that in action. We can set our scoreboard objectives to the sidebar. This would be count here. This is also automatically added, just a feature of objD. We can see this is at 1 currently, and if we click this arrow here, you can see on the side, this is incrementing and it works fine. Now I also want to show you another feature of this interactive slot here, and that is the count score. So let's see, we want to change this to the first row and then copy this whole thing here with no actions at all. And let's change this to paper here. This should be in the second row, so directly underneath. And then we can provide a count score. Fortunately, we have already a score here, so let's insert this here. And what this will do is essentially apply the value of the score to the count of our item. And I also want to insert another arrow here that decreases the amount. So we just say -1 and we want the third row here. Let's generate it again. And I want to reload. And now we can see we have these two arrows here and also our paper in the middle that represents our scoreboard right here. And now we can just click on these arrows here and decrease or increase our value. This becomes very handy if you make some options GUI or if you want to toggle something. And you can go up to 64, of course, and implement some options here. So now let's see how we can handle multiple pages. Therefore, we just insert into this array here another GUI page. Therefore, we just insert a new GUI page into this pages array here. And of course, this also needs a list of slots again. So quickly do an interactive here with an item, items.apple, items.apple, and provide a log, an action of log page 2. This would be our only slot right here. What we can do now is implement the change page slot right here. And you can also see this has 3 constructors. You can go to the next page, to the previous page, and also to an exact page. Every page has a certain number that is saved in a scoreboard. And here you can go to any page you want. So let's just implement next. We can again choose an arrow here. I don't know. And we can also provide a slot. So this will again be a chest here. And we want it in the 3rd row and the 9th column. Let's do a similar thing right here. Now we want the previous page and we want it in the 1st column right here. Let's see how this looks in Minecraft. You can quickly reload. And now you can see we have this arrow right here and we can navigate between these pages. And we also have the action here. You can see it down in the chat. Everything works like expected. Well, how does this work? On the side we can now see the scoreboard that is responsible for this page. And the page is saved in the player. That means for the chest here, the page would always be the one that is saved in the scoreboard of the nearest player. Of course, in the inventory it is always player based. And now if we save this page here, you can see the scoreboard changes and objD GUI does execute different files in the background so that this here gets cleared and the new GUI is loaded. It is also pretty interesting if you try to insert a change page.previous in the first page here, because objD will automatically detect that this won't work. And you can see here it prints out a warning. You try to navigate to a page 0, we don't have a page 0, it begins at 1. That is not in the stack. So now let's continue with the second page here, and there are a few other parameters that you have on the GUI page here in general. And like I mentioned before, you can actually leave this item here empty, but then you have to provide a placeholder that is global to the page. So let's do that real quick. And let's choose a stained glass pane. And now in case we use a placeholder here, we can just leave this constructor here empty. And it will use the item that we provided here as a placeholder. That way you can use placeholders all over the place. And you just have to define the placeholder item once, which is pretty common that you just have one placeholder item. But maybe more common is that you want to fill an entire GUI with placeholders. So in this case we have all of our interactive items here and the rest should not be accessible. We don't want to put items in there. We don't want to have any interaction on it. And then we can just say please fill the whole GUI, and that can be done with this option here, fill empty slots. You can just set this to true, and let's see how this looks. So let's navigate to the page again, and now we can see we have this gray stained glass pane here in every slot that is not occupied by an item that we defined previously. Now there might be also the case that you want to have a slot in this filled GUI that you want to put an item in, and therefore there is the empty slot right here. This just takes an optional slot right here, but you of course could also leave it empty and let it fill up the GUI itself. But let's provide a slot, slot.chest again. Let's choose the second row and the 8th column. And now you can see we have this empty slot here, and in case I get an item really quick, we can also put an item in here. You can check yourself in your data pack if there's an item in there, and this could be used for custom crafting or, for example, custom enchanter. So now we defined a placeholder for our second page here and filled all the empty slots. Now there might be the case that you want to have the same placeholder for all of your pages, which is also pretty common. And therefore you can just go into the GUI module right here and define the placeholder there. This will apply to all the pages, but of course you can also override it by the page itself again. So let's also insert the fill empty slots into the other page right here, and then it should also hopefully work. Another option that we have in the module right here is the global slots. These are some slots that will apply to each page. You can kind of imagine that these are just like added to this array here, and then all of it is generated. So let's say we want on each page this next and previous arrow here. So let's define a list down here, and here we have the next, and before it should be the previous. So now we just have the interactive parts in our page. The placeholders are gone, the navigation is gone. We define it as a global thing for our GUI module. Again, we can see it right here, and we see all of it is filled here, and we have the navigation errors right here, and everything works as expected. But we still have a problem here. This is a fixed location. This probably won't work in a data pack that should add dynamically GUIs and apply to different chests, different containers all over the place. So let's see how we can solve this problem here. Well, first I want to remove it from this modules array here. And what we want to do is go into this main file here. That is the file that runs 20 times a second. And here we can execute the module as well. As a reminder, a module is also a widget, can be inserted into your widget tree. And in our case, this would be exactly the same effect if we put it into our main file right here, or if we put it into the modules array. And now we want to apply this GUI to every block that is at the location of a certain armor stand, for example. This can be done with the execute widget right here at a certain location of an entity. The entity would be in our case entities.armorStand. There we have it. And let's also give this a tag so we can distinguish between all of the armor stands that are in our world. Let's just name it GUI container. And now we can give it a children's property, which has a list of children that should be executed at this certain location here. And here we can just paste our GUI module. Of course, we have to import it. You can just do this with this little light bulb here, and it will import the GUI package. And of course, we also have to copy the scoreboard. Let's insert this here. Of course, we still have the fixed location here. So let's change this to location.here. This will just be the location of the entity. And now this particular chest here should not be interactive anymore, but we can look at it and run a summon command. Summon armor stand with the tags of GUI container like we specified before. Well, this is terribly misaligned here, but now our GUI again works. And we could place this chest here with the armor stand or area effect cloud everywhere in our world, dynamically, maybe also with some effects, some models around it, and it would work globally in your world with different players and different locations. There would also be another use case for it. For example, that you have a portable GUI, a portable crafting table, portable enchanter, or so on, or something like this. And this is also supported by the GUI package. So let's remove this execute add here again, and then we can define GUI.item. So this would bind the GUI to a specific item. So if a player holds the item, the GUI would show and has the GUI on its screen. This is of course realized with minecarts that are floating in the air and that the player can click on and open the GUI. Of course, to trigger this GUI we need an item, and that is defined as the first argument here that is also required. And let's just choose items.chest. So now everyone that holds a chest in its hand should get this GUI in front and should be able to open it and modify things in it. Of course, for this item again, you can provide custom model data, you can provide NBT, a name, and so on. So you can really customize it, show it like you want to, and only if the player holds this specific item that may be specific to your data pack, it actually shows the GUI. For now, we just use a usual chest here, but this is not really a good idea for a real data pack. So now let's see how this works. If we hold a chest here, you can see this minecart floating in the air. And if you right click, you can see the GUI here fully functioning like you would expect. And then you could also texture this minecart here to be invisible. This is unfortunately not possible with vanilla Minecraft, but there is one little neat trick that you can do if you don't want to use a texture pack. And this can be done by choosing the always active option here and setting this to false. And now the minecart will just be active if the player looks directly down, and there is also a specific offset that the minecart hides in the ground. And now we can see the minecart is gone, we can like interact, anything. And now if we look down and right click, we can see the GUI shows here. I can show you how this works with a bit of glass here. You can see there's a certain angle that we look down where the minecart appears, and it is a bit offset so we can't see it when we are on the ground, but we can right click it and we get the GUI here. So this is a pretty neat way to hide it, and it works fine in the most cases. But there might be the case that you want to provide a custom offset. So this is the location where the minecart is spawned and teleported to. You can provide really anything here. You can also, for example, just say location.relative y1, and this will like always spawn the minecart in the player itself, and you can always right click. And then we also have another option here that is the name. This is just a text component. Let's name it awesome, and this will just be the name of our minecart here that will show inside of the GUI. Of course, with all the other containers here, and you have to name it yourself because these blocks here already have to be placed. objD does not modify any of it, just the items inside of the GUI. And also remember that these are just GUI sizes. So the code in objD is not bound to a chest, for example, even though the constructor is named chest, but it is bound to this size here. So you could also use a Chalker box here, you can use a barrel, anything would work, and it would still modify the items correctly. So a few last things here. Of course, I have to mention it. We also have a few other modes here. For example, the inventory, the minecart, or the NHS, and these are all bound to an entity. That means you can say entity.all, for example, and this will show the GUI in the inventory of all the players. And then we also have the case that in an interactive view, for example, if you have some actions, you actually get the context itself. So you can also bind your custom scores or anything to add as, so entity.selected, and you don't have to use the player. There's a special case for the inventory itself, and it is named fill hotbar. Of course, you have this extra hotbar in the inventory, and with this option here, you can optionally fill the hotbar as well with some action items that can't be removed, but you have to see how your data pack works out. And for every GUI module, you also have some other options here. You can define the count score. This is a scoreboard used to see how many items are in your GUI compared to the last tick. So therefore you could define a custom score that fits your name scheme or anything. And of course we also have a custom score for the page. You might want to change this as well from the default objD GUI page. Yeah, this would be it. I hope you have fun with this GUI package. You can create awesome things. In case you didn't watch it already, I also have a visual editor for this. You can read an article about it in the description below, and also you can find the GitHub link and the pubdev link right there. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching, and we'll see us very soon.